All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to look up the upcoming game for the 49ers at the Rams. This will be played on Thursday Night Football, and it's going to be a short week for the 49ers here, dealing with their injuries especially. So on Monday, Brock Purdy didn't practice, Jennings didn't practice, and Pearsall didn't practice. So these injuries are really mounting for the 49ers right now. They had Nick Bosa's already out for the year. So these guys are really struggling with injuries right now. And this is, I think, going to be a big game for the Rams coming up here. It's a divisional battle. So, these teams always play each other close. But McVay has really had the edge against Kyle Shanahan. He's won the last 3 matchups, I can say that. But I'm going to start. Let's look at the 49ers when they're on offense. So the 49ers passing offense, they overall have a PFF, Pro Football Focus, pass blocking grade of 66.7, sixth best. But when I look at this more in depth, they have really strong left and right tackles anchoring this O-line. But the interior is pretty below average and weak. But they're still pretty good overall here. It's not really like an issue for them yet. But it could be, I feel like, especially as they play a better pass rush, because they get harder competition when they play the Rams, who have had a top 10 pass rush this year compared to teams like Arizona and Jacksonville, who haven't been as great in the pass rush. If we look, see what I put here. The Rams are 9th in pressure rate, 21%. They blitz middle of the pack at 21%, but PFF does give them 7th in pass rush. And they're also 2nd in coverage, 3rd in tackling, 12th in rush defense. And they're the 2nd overall defense from Pro Football Focus. They're also the 12th in defensive DVOA, 7th against the pass, and 15th against the rush DVOA. So this is a really solid and underrated defense. And if there's any flaws with this 49ers interior offensive line, they could have problems. We get back to the 49ers offense here. There's still no Kittle or Ayuk. Like I said about Purdy, Jennings, and Pearsall didn't practice. One thing, a takeaway here, though, is they do have really solid run blocking, but they're not rushing the ball that great. I mean, I have McCaffrey in my one season-long fantasy league, and he's been excellent overall at the position, right? But a lot of this is in the receiving game. He's getting a lot of targets, and he's doing pretty well as a rusher, but he's not dominating in the rushing game. I think a lot of that has to do with San Francisco's limited offense right now, so teams can key in on McCaffrey. But, yeah, when you look at this, they aren't doing super well with rushing. Yeah, they're bottom 5 with rushing DVOA. So McCaffrey is kind of holding them together in the short passing game. And the receivers are playing pretty well. They're ranked pretty high with PFF, top 15 actually. But what's going to hurt them is these injuries. I mean, Pearsall's been the only player on their team to deliver against zone coverages on defense. And he has something wrong with his knee right now, where I think it's a UCL or PCL, where he didn't practice Monday. I think it'll be a surprise if he plays, and if he does, he won't be as effective most likely, and he left the Jaguars game, during a play. So I think you can kind of bank on him not playing or only being maybe like 60% if he does play. But we'll see. That's obviously a big boost for the 49ers if he does play. And when you look at, especially for Jennings as well, like the one game last year where the Rams played the 49ers, Jennings went off in September. He had over 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, I believe, was the stat line for him Let me just double check that for you. Yeah, he had 11 receptions, 175, 3 touchdowns. This was September of last year, obviously different teams. But it just shows what he can do. But if he doesn't play this game either, they're in real trouble. And he didn't practice Monday either. And Purdy didn't practice. But I will say, when you look at Mac Jones and Brock Purdy, Mac Jones he's really hanging in there. He's basically playing just as well as Purdy is with his quarterback PFF rating. But the one thing that's been hurting, or the one thing is that like Purdy has more upside. He's been elite when he's kept clean, and Mac has been solid. You know what I mean? But surprisingly, both have been horrible under pressure, and Purdy has been even worse than Mac under pressure this year. So they're both about average against the blitz. Below average, I'd say, with the PFF grades, but not horrible as long as they're kept clean, obviously. So, yeah, San Francisco's going to have a lot of lack of weapons here. I don't expect more than 14 to 17 points for San Francisco. McCaffrey is really the only threat at this point, especially if Pearsall and Jennings are out. Even if, say, Jennings plays and Pearsall's out, I wouldn't bank on Jennings too much, but you never know. But he hasn't been good against zone this year. He is dealing with injuries. So last year's box score for him, I would kind of toss aside, as that was a year ago, and he's dealing with injury. But you never know. And the Rams having a good top 5 coverage rate this year as well, so far. Yeah. So when you look at that, I will say the 49ers tight end, Jake Tungas, he might get a little more work this week, assuming Pearsall and Jennings are out. And he's had like a 63 grade against zone, which is not bad. It's serviceable. So I'd expect him to get a few targets, him and McCaffrey. I expect McCaffrey to have a game similar to Jonathan Taylor last week. The 49ers use a lot of 21 or 2 running back personnel, like heavy personnel. And the Colts used some of that last week when they played the Rams. And the Rams were pretty effective against it. Overall, Jonathan Taylor had about, I think, like 76 yards rushing and like maybe five catches. So I expect something like that from McCaffrey, like maybe 14 or 15 fantasy points in PPR, but does he get a touchdown? I don't know. So, of course, he's going to get his volume, but I think with this offense being limited right now and the Rams defense being good, I don't expect like a superb performance from him, but he will get a lot of volume, most likely. And, okay, now when we look at the Rams offense here and we shift gears, so San Francisco is 3rd worst in pressure and 6th worst in blitz rate. So not more than 17% each. And I heard a good stat from the Pro Football Focus podcast this week, their NFL podcast, where they review grades with Trevor and Dalton. Really, really good podcast I listen to for these games too. But like the 49ers had like a really bad pass rush win rate comparatively to the rest of the league last week, and that was without Bosa against the Jaguars. So I really don't think this pass rush will be an issue for Stafford. What's crazy for the Rams is that the Rams on offense are just like killing it in every category. They're top 10 in rushing. They're the top ranked offense overall. Their rush blocking grade is top 10. Their receivers, I believe, I think they're number 1 or they're really close to it. But their pass blocking grade is bottom 2, which is insane. And I got to look more into that as to why. They have played 2 top 5 pass rushes so far with the Texans and the Eagles, so that probably has a little to do with it. But the other thing is Stafford has a pretty quick release this season. In the McVay offenses, so you're not too worried about them mitigating pressure, and especially if they're playing a team that's not generating much pressure. This is a huge plus matchup for Stafford. We saw last night with the Jets and the Dolphins that if you have, at least in that game, if you have bad pass rushes and you go up against basically performing bad offensive lines, it's going to help the offenses quite a bit because, yes, they have a weakness in their offensive line, but if you can't capitalize on that weakness, it does create an edge for that offense where they usually wouldn't have one because, you can mitigate things with a quick release, short passes, putting tight ends on the line of scrimmage to block, things like that. So I think last night Miami and the Jets, offensively moving the football, they really had no problems with that. So I kind of expect the Rams to have no problems either moving the ball against San Francisco. And let's see, the San Francisco, similar to the Rams, they utilize a large amount of zone coverage. And let's see, the 49ers, the one thing they do well is they're ranked 6th in pass coverage. But you wonder how much of that will start to fold, with their lack of pass rush. And they've played some teams so far, like the Saints, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, who you got to give it to them. They can pass the ball pretty well, and you got to give credit to this 49ers coverage. But I feel like Stafford and the Rams can exploit that. And they've also been 22nd against the rush. Now, this is a key nugget I noticed. Last year, Kyren Williams, he had over 80 yards and a touchdown and over 20 carries both games against the Rams in the regular season. I'm not sure that's going to repeat, but I do think, if I'm coaching the Rams and McVay here, you're seeing a weakness in the 49ers front seven. Definitely established a run with Kyren Williams. They should have more possessions. I like Williams to go over his rushing prop here. If it's, especially if you're putting, I like to sometimes do some small teasers. And I might say like Kyren Williams, 50 or 60 plus rushing yards. You get less value on him, but a higher hit rate. If you mix that in with something else. Now, so Williams looks up for a good game. Now, Puka Nacua has been absolutely phenomenal so far for the Rams. He's the number 1 rated wide receiver with PFF. We knew he was going to crush zone coverage, and he's been crushing it this year. And he's also been elite, great against man coverage. So man is not a weakness for him. And we look at Devontae Adams, he's much better against man coverage. And he's really not doing much against zone statistically with his grade. But I looked into his couple matchups against the Eagles and the Colts, and he still scored a touchdown even though they play a high amount of zone. So I don't give him like a huge upside day, but I think Adams can get a touchdown, 5 or 6 receptions. So not bad. But yeah, I definitely expect Puka Nacua to get at least like whatever he's been getting here, like 5, 6, 7 receptions. He's going to be a focal point against that zone. He's going to be heavily involved. Kyren Williams will be heavily involved. Stafford will have time to throw. The Rams defense has had much more of a pass rush. They're covering pretty well, like San Francisco overall. They're tackling pretty well. So those are some factors I like. And they're defending the rush, middle of the pack, a little better than San Francisco. So both teams need work there, but I think it's sort of like you got to defend so much more with the Rams, where right now, when the 49ers are on offense, it's sort of like, okay, let's focus on McCaffrey, either stack the box or keep him in that zone for like a 2-yard pass and be ready to tackle. And they really have no one to throw to right now. So as opposed to the 49ers, it's like we got to stop Kyren running, and we have to stop Adams and Nacua in this zone coverage here. And we're not getting much of a pass rush. So I definitely like the Rams here. Let me see what else I have. Let's see. Yeah, Nacua set up for success. I think I pretty much covered it all here. So I'm going to go for a final score here I'm going to go with the Rams 28-13 if we don't have Jennings and Pearsall. But if Jennings and Pearsall play, and I should say this is regardless of Purdy or Jones. I think they're about equal in my opinion so far this year, for all things considered with this offense. But without Pearsall, I said 28-13 without Pearsall and Jennings. But if we get Ricky Pearsall playing and he can be okay in there against zone, he gets a cortisone shot or whatever on his knee, and if Jennings is in there too, I think this is a little bit closer. I think the 49ers will have a little bit more hope, move the ball a little better offensively. Then I'd probably look at that more of like a 23-17 type game for the Rams, divisional game. But I'm expecting more of a 28-13 game with these receivers, one or two of them being out. So I think the Rams should have no problem here. Again, they beat them twice last year, and in both games, Kyren Williams was able to run the ball really effectively. And I think that's how the Rams can build a lead and hold a lead Thursday night. All right, so thank you so much for listening to this podcast. We'll try to keep this stuff going. I'll try to have some more games for you this week. All right, thanks. Best of luck.